Welcome again to Joe Stunner Boxing. Before I start, let me mention a guy called Russell Newton, who said to me, about Ken Buchanan, who passed away less than a week ago. He said, you're going to do something on Ken Buchanan, great lightweight champion from Scotland. And he's quite right. I absolutely should make this video because Ken Buchanan was one of Britain's greatest fighters. He passed away, like I say, less than a week ago. I think I got sort of tied up with the AJ Jermaine Franklin card and the stuff from America, so this is a little bit late, this video, so I apologise for that. But yeah, Ken Buchanan, what a great fighter, and fought from 1965 to 1982, ended his career with 61 wins with 27 knockouts and 8 defeats. Of the defeats, only one was by stoppage, and that was controversially against Roberto Duran in 1972 when he lost his WBA lightweight title. Ken had also won the WBC title, but had vacated it over, I think it was a dispute over money. There was some sort of contractual issue. I can't remember exactly what, but great fighter, Ken Buchanan. Like I say, turned pro in 1965. His first title win was a Scottish area title. He won over 10 rounds, and that was in the year I was born, 1967. That was against John McMillan. And McMillan had a losing record. I think this was kind of one of those instances where the title was vacant for a long time, the Scottish area lightweight title, and they wanted Kent to fight for it, so they just dragged someone in. And no disrespect to John McMillan, who went the distance with a great fighter, 10 rounds, but he did have a losing record, 6-10-3. I think McMillan was. I looked it up on BoxRec before I hit record button. I did a rare bit of homework because normally I just hit the button and off I go, but I did look it up because I know that it was a losing record. And credit to McMillan for going the distance, but that was Ken's first title. And the obvious thing, having won that title, was to go for the British title. That was, see, this is the thing about fighters in those days, and Ken Buchanan's a very good example. Ken had, before he even fought for the British title, he had like 30-something fights, I think. And he fought regularly, in 67, he fought, I think, 8 times, 9, 10 times, I can't even remember. But they would rack up fight after fight after fight, and they would have, no one gave Ken Buchanan anything. He fought at domestic level, fought regularly, a lot of fighters who had, some of them had good records, some of them had bad records, but he was always fighting. And he built himself up, and he did the domestic level. Then he had a shot at the European, and then he went on to world. So he did it the old-fashioned way, and again fought very regularly. So eventually, Ken, having won the Scottish title, he fights an eliminator for the British, and then when he does fight for the British against Maurice Cullen, he knocks him out in 11 rounds. It was an old 15-rounder, kind of a rare-ish knockout win for Ken. And then he suffered his first defeat. I mean, the British title win was in 1968. And then he had another string of fights. And he suffered his first defeat when he went to Madrid in Spain to fight Miguel Velasquez for the EBU title. And he lost out on points. Now, I can't remember ever seeing that fight. I've watched a lot of Ken Buchanan. Have I ever seen that fight? I might have seen clips of it. But if you go abroad and you lose on points, and Velasquez had a good record. I think he's 38-1-1. So you have to question, well, did you really lose? Because those were the days when you would get jobbed big time if you went abroad. I'm not saying that's the case because I can't remember watching that fight. Anyway, the point was he lost. And that was his first defeat. He lost over 15 rounds to Velasquez in Spain. And so he went down the pecking order. He won the Scottish title, he won the British title, had a go at the EBU. Nope. So he dropped back down to British lightweight level. And he actually scored, he went back and fought for his British title, which he still held, and stopped Brian Hudson in 5 rounds. And that got him a shot at Ismael Laguna, who is a very great, very underrated fighter, very good fighter. This was in 1970. It was still only in 1970. And this was for the WBA lightweight title. and this was in Sun 1, and Ken went over there and won a 15-round split decision over Laguna. Laguna could fight. I mean, Laguna at the time was like 63 wins and 6 defeats and a draw or 2. But, you know, what a performance to go aboard. And people are going to say, well, Laguna may have seen better days. That's probably accurate. But what people don't realise is, I mean, Laguna was right to the end, was tough. He ended up with, I think, 60. He didn't fight for that much longer after, because he had a rematch with Buchanan. Buchanan beat him again. He didn't fight for that much longer, but he ended up with 65 wins, 9 defeats. He was never stopped. Never stopped. Ken beat him twice, and this guy could really box. Ken was a beautiful boxer, but Laguna, I think, if memory serves, when Ken won the rematch, Laguna retired. So this was towards the end of Laguna's, career, and Laguna had reigned, very, very impressively as in his own right as a lightweight champion. But don't take nothing away from Ken Buchanan. I mean, to beat this guy twice, to outbox him, was a hell of an achievement. So that was for the WBA lightweight title, and then that was in 1970, sort of back end of 70, like September, October, and then in early 71, Ken went over, and this was in LA, Los Angeles, and fought Ruben Navarro, who was the WBC champion. At the time, there were only 2 belts. Well, let's say that. The WBA and the WBC, and there were a couple of others floating around, like the New York State, there's a New York, whatever it was called. There were other belts, regional people who said, no, he's the champion, he's the champion, he's the champion. But the 2 that mattered were the WBA and the WBC. And Ken faced Ruben Navarro in LA, and beat him. He was WBC champ. So now Ken's the WBA and the WBC champion, the unified champ. He is top of the hill, having been that modest sort of guy fighting for the Scottish title, then the British, then losing abroad for the EBU. He took his opportunities at world level, moved up, and won both the belts. So he's unified champ, undisputed, and the top dog. And he did it the hard way. Nothing was ever given to him. So, of course, if you become the undisputed champ, you got a target on your back. And sure enough, along comes someone in 1972, this lithe, lightweight panther, this absolute killer, the young Roberto Duran, who fights Ken. Again, 15 rounds, of course. All the title fights back in the day, whether they were British or world title fights, they were 15 rounds. And Duran is, you can see that fight. I've watched it many times. Duran was clearly winning that fight, but couldn't get rid of Ken. He couldn't get near him, and he was used to smashing people to bits. He couldn't do it with Ken. So what did he do in the 13th round? He punched him very, very low, and the fight was stopped. Duran was not disqualified. It's photographic evidence. You can see it. I've only ever seen version of that fight. I've only ever seen like a grainy sort of black and white thing, or it's not very good quality. But even then, you can you can see the low blow, and I think Duran just got frustrated. He couldn't catch up with Ken. Ken was too good a boxer, so he fouled him, stopped him in 13 rounds, and that was for the WBA title. Ken had vacated the WBC title. There was some sort of contractual dispute, but he was the champion, and Duran eventually would unify, would win the WBC title as well. And then Ken, after that, he didn't get the rematch, which he thoroughly deserved. He gave Duran a chance. That was in Madison Square Garden, that fight, the Duran fight. Duran didn't give Ken the rematch. Ken deserved it. He gave him a chance. Duran didn't want to know. And then I think his first fight back was against none other than Carlos Ortiz. Ortiz was at the end of his career, or getting there. And he stopped him in 6 rounds. I think that was actually Ortiz's last fight. So with Laguna and Ortiz, the knock against Ken is, well, he caught them at the right time. He caught them at the end of their careers, but they still had something left. I mean, it wasn't Ortiz was pretty much washed up, But anyway, Ken carries on, and he drops down, as you used to in those days, to lightweight, and beats none other than Jim Watt, 15 rounds for the British lightweight title. So yet again, he is the British champion, and that was in 1973. But ultimately, he's looking to get back into the world scene, and yeah, he wants Duran again. He then went over in 74 to Italy and beat Antonio Pudu for the EBU lightweight title, and this was the title that, of course, he didn't get when he went to Spain before he became world champ. So his career went Scottish champion, British champion, failed at the EBU, jumped up to become undisputed world champion, dropped back down, won the lightweight title, and then won the EBU title, which, of course, he finally got that EBU title in Italy, again on the road. All right. And then he finally, after all, he defended the EBU title. I can't remember who against. I know he defended it though. But then he goes in for the WBC lightweight title against Guts Ishimatsu, who another, decent tough guy. Didn't have a very good statistical record, but was a tough guy. And this was, I want to say this was in Japan. I can't remember where. Can't remember, but I'm sure it was in Japan. And he loses on points over 15 rounds. And he then drops down again, wins, he defends his EBU title, still looking for to get back to those world honours, but it wasn't meant to be. The Ishimatsu fight was the last time Ken got a sniff of a world title. He then dropped back down to, I want to say he lost his EBU lightweight title to Charlie Nash, and that would have been late 70s, 78, 79. But he carried on. His money wasn't invested well. Ken lost money, like a lot of fighters, carried on fighting for the paychecks, and had a British title eliminator against Steve Early. That was 1981, and then in 82 he finally retired. But of the 8 defeats that Ken Buchanan suffered, 5 of them were in his last 7 fights. So he was one of those fighters. He carried on trying to reclaim the glory days. Didn't quite happen. And didn't hang on to his money, unfortunately, but was, without a shadow of a doubt, a great champion, a beautiful boxer, real slick, so impossible to pin down. And very much a textbook boxer. I mean, he did everything by the book, but he did it all so well that even someone like a Duran, or Duran couldn't pin him down. You watch that fight. Duran's winning the fight, no question about it. He can't, and he is occasionally, he hurts Buchanan, but Buchanan just holds his shape and sticks to his boxing and sort of fiddles his way through. He's just a great boxer. But that was Ken Buchanan, 1965, debuted and then retired in 1982. The former Scottish, British, EBU and undisputed lightweight champion. A man who was given nothing, who had to fight for it all, who earned everything he ever won, who ducked absolutely no one, and travelled. Did a lot of his winning on the road in America, Madison Square Garden, LA, EBU fights in Italy and Spain. I mean, the guy was one of Britain's greatest champions, greatest fighters, no question about it. So I hope you enjoyed that little retrospective. R.I.P. to Ken. Yeah, what a great fighter. Leave your comments below. Maybe you're a little bit older than I am, which means you might have seen Ken fight. I only caught the back end of his career. I mean, when he was pretty much finished. But people used to say to me, Ken Buchanan was a great fighter. My granddad used to say that, and he was a great fighter. I came to the party late because of my age, but if you're older than me and you remember Ken, leave your comments below. I'll be very, very interested to hear your opinions on Ken. Or maybe you're a young boxing fan, you've discovered him, but if you haven't seen this guy fight, go over to YouTube and take a look and tell me what you think. Thanks for your time as always. If you could subscribe to the channel, that'd be great. Like the video if you like the video, and we will speak again soon. Meanwhile, bye for now.